Hi guys, welcome back to Plot Portal, the podcast where we delve into our favourite fantasy, TV, film and book plots. We look at fan theories, facts, questions, plot holes and just all the rest. So we are on to episode 2 of season 1 and we are currently looking at the upcoming Harry Potter HBO TV series that's due to come out in the next couple of years. And we are looking at the key points that were missed out of the Harry Potter books in the films. So things that the films didn't portray that we hope they do include in the HBO series. So in part 1, we started looking into specifically Philosopher's Stone and what from the books were missed out in the films that we sort of think could be included in the series. And now we're going to go on to part 2. So in part 1, we looked at mainly sort of the things that happened before Hogwarts, and now we're looking at those sort of bits that happen later on in Hogwarts. And we really started to get into the sort of deeper plot points and some major bits that were missed out in the film. Firstly, something that I actually only realised when rereading the books recently is that in the books, Harry has a dream that really quite majorly, not even subtly, hints at Voldemort's connection to Quirrell, and that Quirrell may have something to do with all the strangeness that's going on. In Philosopher's Stone, or Sorcerer's Stone if you're from America, so it says that on Harry's first night at Hogwarts, he has a dream. It describes him as wearing a turban, just like Professor Quirrell. And the turban gets stuck on his head and it speaks to him. It speaks to him and it tells him to transfer into Slytherin House. So I think this is meant to try and be subtle because I think it's meant to confuse the reader. Is Harry thinking about the sorting ceremony, or from where the sorting hat was talking to him when it was on his head, telling him he could be in Slytherin? I think that's what it's meant to make you think, when really it's also a hint at Quirrell's turban and the fact that Quirrell has Voldemort in his head literally talking to him. So like the sorting hat was talking in Harry's ear, Quirrell has that happening with his turban constantly. So whilst it's probably a little bit playing on the worries that Harry had from the sorting ceremony, it's also a prophetic dream and basically giving that first hint that Quirrell might have more going on than we think. But that dream isn't included in the films, and I think I do sort of understand why. Because I think when you're depicting it in, like, on something that people can see, it's harder to make it subtle. Because if you literally are seeing Harry wearing Quirrell's turban, all of that, you'd be like, what's going on there? Whereas in the books, you're able to sort of infer that it could be Quirrell's turban. It's not explicitly said. Whereas, yeah, when you're watching something, you can't really infer. It's just there on the screen. So I do understand why it wasn't included. And it's one that it would be interesting to see. I don't think it's one that HBO would necessarily have to put in a series. I don't think it's like a deal breaker or a plot point sort of turner. If there's maybe something they could include instead that delivers the same sort of thing, where it's the same sort of foreshadowing and hint at what's happening, but without being too obvious. If they were to show that prophetic dream, it might be a little bit too obvious then. I know we are all going to know anyway, because we've all watch Harry Potter 4, we know, but it is meant to be, to someone watching Harry Potter for the first time, the fact that it's Quirrell who's doing all this stuff is meant to be a surprise. It's meant to be a shock. It's meant to be a plot twist. So whilst it's never going to be for us, obviously they still have to try, because there will be people watching it for the first time, younger generations mainly, who are watching Harry Potter for the first time and are just discovering it through the series. So they obviously do need to make sure there is that element of surprise. So it's how they're going to do that and deliver that. So that prophetic dream, it is a major point, but I don't know if they necessarily have to include it, but I think they need to include something that has the same impact, in that it gives a hint and almost is, foreshadowing or prophesizing what's to come, but without being too obvious. Another little detail that is changed is in the films, Harry gets his Nimbus 2000 from McGonagall and opens it in the Great Hall in front of everyone. Whereas in the books, Harry opens the note first, where it says, don't open this in front of other people because everyone will want one. And he takes it away with Ron and they open it in private. But that's just completely disregarded in the film. So I do think it'd be nice, again, there's little details that would help make the HBO series just stand out, be different, make it really true to the source material. I think that would be really good. The films never explain what a squib is. In the films, we learn that Filch is a squib. I think it's literally mentioned once, just that he is a squib. But in the films, there is absolutely zero explanation as to what a squib is. You are literally blind as a viewer. If you've not read the books, now that I think about it, Why did they not do that? How could they expect? Were they expecting that every single person who watched the film would have read the book? But they knew that wouldn't be the case, so I really don't understand that. I only knew these things because I had my sister who was older than me who had read all of the books first, and I would ask her anything I didn't understand. I'd be like, Melissa, what does this mean? And she would tell me. That's the only reason I knew what a squib was, and I'd never really questioned it. But it is such a good point. In the films, they literally don't give any explanation at all as to what a squib is. That you just know that Filch is one, and you can kind of infer, well, he can't really do magic, but it's not explained any further than that. So that's definitely something they need to include in the TV series. I explained this a bit in part 1, that there are a few things there that were basically the films omitting explanation. So they're not necessarily big things that are changed, but it's little explanations that, whilst they don't seem like much, it makes such a difference to the whole watching experience, the understanding it. It's those things that honestly you see in the films and then you do have to Google to check what it means and to do all those things. And you, like, it's things you don't think, hang on, is that a plot hole? And you Google it, you're like, oh no, okay, it's not a plot hole, it just wasn't explained. Like, I think this TV series needs to make sure it includes those little explanations, because they might not seem important, but they really are. Another difference is on Christmas morning, when Harry gets his presents, he actually gets a different present from Hagrid. So in the books, he gets a flute. He gets a flute that Hagrid has carved, and it is that they use for Fluffy. There's no magical harp in the books. Harry uses the flute that Hagrid gave him, another like almost little clue of why it feels like Hagrid is helping them along the whole thing sort of purposefully. He uses that flute and he plays it, Harry plays that to put Fluffy to sleep. And that is how they get past him. Yeah, not a magical harp or anything like that. It's from the flute that Hagrid gave him. And again, it works fine in the films. The change that they made, absolutely fine. It still works. But again, I think if they can stay true to the books and keep those little details, I think it makes sense. And it's also just nice the fact that Hagrid gave him a present and that he put all that effort into carving a flute for him. Like, that's lovely. And yeah, I really hope they include. Then when Harry goes to the Mirror of Erised, in the films, it shows him just seeing his parents, whereas in the books, he sees his whole family. And he literally sees like generations and generations of all his family. And then he realizes the two that are either side of him, nearest to him, he infers from the way they look that they are his parents. And I quite like that it shows his whole family, not just his parents, because in the films, we get absolutely zero mention of any other members of Harry's family. It makes it seem like Harry's family is just his mum and dad and that they're no longer here. There's no even nod to their parents, to any wider family at all. And it's something, again, that I've had to Google, like, where are the rest of Harry's family? But by him looking in the mirror and seeing it, it just adds that depth of like, yeah, he did obviously have more family. They're clearly not here anymore, but it shows that there is obviously more people than just Lily and James. It's Harry's desire for a family as a whole, not just his parents, like a big family, which he then gets at the end. He marries Ginny, so he's part of the big Weasley family with, you know, Ron now a brother-in-law and Hermione a sister-in-law because she marries Ron. He gets that big family he wants. It's like quite a nice full circle. So I really think it would be nice for them to include that in the series. Norbert the dragon. So in the films, we see Norbert hatch, we see Draco then find them, all of that. But there's actually quite a big point. So what actually happens in the books is they see Norbert hatch and that's all fine. But that's not where things then start to go wrong and they get spotted and everything. Harry and Hermione actually deliver Norbert to Charlie. I think it's actually the only point. I think Charlie only really appears twice, which is in the first book and then in Goblet of Fire when he brings the dragons to the Triwizard Tournament. But in Philosopher's Stone, we meet Charlie. We see Charlie, Hermione and Harry give Norbert to Charlie for him to take him away and look after him. But that's not included in the films. It just shows him hatching and that's sort of it. And we just know he has to send him away and that's about it. But it's quite a nice little extra bit, bringing in Charlie. I think that would be a good one to add if they could actually cast someone as Charlie in the HBO series and we actually meet him. That would be nice. I know he doesn't have a major part. He doesn't show up much, but that's fine. It would just be nice to at least be able to put like a face, an actor to the character. It would just be quite nice because he is the brother that's talked about the least, and just having a little include, and you could basically forget about him in the films with how little he's mentioned. So it would be quite nice to have that extra scene that does show him in the series. So the next plotline that was changed and missed out from the films that were in the books, actually potentially one of the biggest ones. And that is the obstacles that the Golden Trio had to overcome in order to find the stone. So in the films, the obstacles we see them having to overcome are Fluffy, Devil's Snare, the keys, chess, and then the Mirror of Error said that Harry deals with, and that's where Quirrell's there. Whereas in the films, there are a couple more obstacles. To be honest, whilst it's only, I think, 2 that they miss out, one of them's a really fun one, and I really wish they'd have kept in. Firstly, actually, before we go into the actual obstacles, one little difference is the way they depict Ron. So in the film, it's shown as Ron's the one that panics, Hermione saves the day, whereas actually Hermione's the one that panics in the books, and then Ron calms her down. He's like, okay, yeah, you're right, and then figures it out. And that might seem like only a little change, but there's actually quite a lot of this throughout the films, where it shows Ron as being almost like the weak one, like the one that's panicked and not as clever, whereas actually he has a lot of moments in the books where he's the one that discovers things, he finds things out, he calms the situation, gets back in control of the situation, and it'd be really nice in the series for them to portray that side of Ron properly, because it just shows him in a better light, and it's just more true to his character and gives his character more depth. They strip away some of that depth in the film to just make him the funny one. And it's great. He's a great character, but I think he'd be even better if they include that cleverness that he does have. But going back to those obstacles that we were talking about. So in the film, 2 rooms are omitted. So basically, to find the Philosopher's Stone, there's these different obstacles, and each one was put in place by a different teacher. So you have the Fluffy that was Hagrid, you've got Devil's Snare that was Sprout, you've got the Wings that was Flitwick, you've got Chess that was McGonagall, and then you have the Mirror that was Dumbledore. However, in the books, there's 2 additional obstacles. There is a Mountain Troll, who, granted in the book, has already been taken down by Quirrell because the troll was Quirrell's room. And then there's additional room, which is perhaps actually the most fun room as a viewer, reader, to go through, and that is Snape's room. Snape has a room, which would completely make sense. Of course, Snape would have a room to guard the stone, but they just missed that one out in the films. He has a potion room where there's like 6 potions laid out. I think it's 6 or 7 potions, and there's a riddle. And you have to find which one. 3 of them will kill you, 1 of them will let you go forward, 1 of you will let them go back, and then I think 2 of them are just wine. And it's Hermione and Harry in that room, because Ron's currently passed out in the room before. They leave him there, those 2 move on, which is quite funny. In the films, it's like, yeah, Hermione, you stay. No, they leave him there. They leave Ron in the chess room, and they go forward into the potion room to continue. A flame appears behind them, so they can't go back to Ron. And then Hermione, of course, solves the riddle, and they pick the right potions. But it's actually really interesting because in the book, they give you the riddle, and you can yourself work it out. Granted, I could not work it out. I think I managed to find out which one of them was. Like, I think I knew which one would kill you, but I couldn't figure out the rest. But it's really interesting, and it really grips you in. Like, I remember just staying on that page for like a good 10 minutes, going through the riddle, trying to work it out. It's a really fun, like, interactive one. And it would just be nice if they include that. Like I said in part 1 about Peeves, I said how if they don't include him, what's the point in the HBO series? Because the point in the series is meant to be to give us all the things the films weren't able to include from the books. So with the series, again with the potion room, if they don't include that, if they just do the same as what the film did, then what's the point? Like, what's the point in the series? So they should include that, and if they don't, I don't know what they're doing. And then the way that Quirrell dies is different as well. So in the book, the reason why Quirrell dies is because Voldemort leaves him. So Voldemort, basically, as he was sort of rising to gain strength, he was possessing animals and different animals and stuff, and then he eventually possessed Quirrell. And every time he unpossesses an animal or a human, that host dies. So that is actually, in the books, what causes Quirrell to die. Voldemort leaving his body. Obviously, in the films, it shows it's being Harry placing his hand to his face and him crumbling, whereas that isn't what's meant to happen. In the books, it's described that basically anytime Harry touches Quirrell, his skin blisters. But that's it, it just blisters. And then Voldemort, because obviously too much pain, and he realises, okay, I can't carry on in Quirrell's body, leaves, and that is then what kills Quirrell, not Harry touching Quirrell. Because I thought, like, when you think, it's quite like dark really, that like Harry in his first year at Hogwarts, in the films, it's shown as him basically killing a teacher. It's literally shown as that, whereas that's not really what's meant to happen. He's meant to blister the teacher, obviously not purposefully, But actually the reason why Quirrell dies is Voldemort. It's Voldemort leaving Quirrell that kills him. So it's basically Voldemort killing Quirrell, not Harry. That is everything for the Philosopher's Stone deep dive. So looking at the plot points from the books that were missed out in the films that we hope they include in the TV series. So when you actually look into it, quite a lot was sort of kept in the films. It was some small things that were changed, some little bits that were omitted. For example, with the obstacle course, that was clearly for sort of probably time constraints rather than anything else. Mainly things not being explained properly, some little changes with when things happen. But some of the biggest things include Harry going to Hogwarts way too early in the films, and characters that were missed out, such as Peeves. So whilst there aren't huge differences, there is a lot of details, a lot of those smaller details in Philosopher's Stone that if they can include in the HBO TV series will really help to just give it more depth, really go into detail, really make the book come to life and give the series more meaning. Major changes are going to come later on in the later books as they get bigger and obviously even less able to include them all in the time. But I think with Philosopher's Stone, they will really have the scope to build the sort of world, to build the wizarding world. They will have the time, with it being a whole season, they probably will add extra material. I think they will stay very true to the books, basically to like a word. I think they will stay really close to it, but I think they're actually going to add more. I think they're going to add things that isn't even in the book. As long as they're careful with it and don't go adding major things that change plots or anything, I think that is fine, and again will give more reason for the series. For example, what I actually think would be really nice if they include more of the general Hogwarts life, include more of them going to class, of their friendships and relationships. If they can include more of that, that will actually just make us feel even more immersed in the story, in the wizarding world. That is where I think they can use that extra time they're going to have. But yeah, let me know what you think, guys. Let me know if there's anything I've missed out that's in the Philosopher's Stone book that wasn't in the film that you want them to include in the HBO series. And yeah, thank you so much for watching or listening, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. And now in the next episode, we're going to be going into Chamber of Secrets and looking at what is in the Chamber of Secrets book that was missed out in the films that could be included in the TV series. So thank you so much, guys. I really hope you enjoyed. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'd be so grateful. Make sure you're subscribed, following, and stay tuned for the next episode of Plot Portal. I will see you very soon.